Hey everybody, welcome to Prescription Sound. I'll be your host Drew as we take a brief but curious venture into current research here at Scripps, valuable career insights, and potentially wider topics in science and technology. So in this episode we have a very exciting guest, Lynda Groocock. Now for any of you here at Scripps who are interested in the prospect of transitioning into industry, and particularly what it's like to be involved in a biotech startup company, then this episode is definitely for you. Lynda is part of the team at Bolita Bio, a startup based in the JLABS complex just around the corner from us. She's also a former postdoc of Scripps, where she worked in the lab here in molecular medicine. So let's get into the podcast and listen to how she made the switch and some of the things she learned along the way. So Lynda, thank you for joining me. Maybe you could give a brief background on the startup company that you're now a part of, what you folks do, and what your specific role is within it.
Sure. So Bolita Bio, they were founded in June 2014, so we're a fairly new company. Currently we have 7 employees. The company itself is focused on enabling drug discovery and development for challenging membrane proteins such as GPCRs and ion channels. So we work primarily with large pharma. We take their favorite construct of choice and we'll work on it, put it through our screening platform and isolate them as stable versions. This allows us to give our clients a little bit more bandwidth for all of their downstream drug discovery efforts. So for example, their proteins will last a little bit longer. They'll tolerate more freeze-thaw cycles. And so hopefully in the long run, give them a little bit more success in their drug discovery efforts.
Oh, that's really cool. So how does that system work? Are they approaching you or are you kind of reaching out to different pharmaceutical companies?
We're a very early stage company, so we're primarily focused on kind of spreading the word and making sure that our technology, people are aware of our technology. So at this stage, it's still a proof of concept and we're on our second or third big contract at the moment. So as we build momentum, as the company becomes more successful and we've proven our technology, then we'll be less us going to them and more them coming to us for sure.
So what does your average day look like?
My average day? Actually, surprisingly, not too much different than my average postdoc day, believe it or not. Being involved in a startup like this, we kind of have to do a lot of bench work still. Myself do a lot of the molecular biology associated with our technology platform, so all the construct design, the cloning, the kind of troubleshooting around sort of bringing new technologies into the sort of field. I also do a lot of the sort of end of line generation of stable cell lines, for example, some of the tissue culture as well. So I kind of do a little bit of everything. But in terms of day-to-day basis, I'm still running PCR reactions.
You can't escape it.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to happen yet.
Yeah. So are you also involved then on how the business development side is going, or do you have people more specifically kind of tuned into that and you're more on the bench side?
Not strictly, but the nice thing about being involved in such a small startup is that we'll have lab meetings together and all the business development will be there. So our founder, our CTO, our innovation guys, so we'll all sit around and twice a week and we'll present all of our lab data as well, and we get to sort of pick apart the problems that we're having, but we also get to hear from the business guys and the finance guys and kind of get a little bit more of a bigger picture of the company and the business as a whole. Although we don't directly sort of contribute to that, we are still exposed to that, which is one of the really nice things about academic versus industry.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some really nice technical integration that you get with that scenario. Now, Bolita Bio is based in JLABS, an innovative incubator space for emerging biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies. This space allows access to core facilities and equipment and boosts opportunities for science entrepreneurs.
So the JLABS research facilities, or the incubator space, is one of the first incubator spaces to be established in San Diego. Therefore, it has a nice reputation that comes along with that. So that benefits the business side for the company, at least. We have an established residence there, and it's got a reputation as being fairly hard to get into. So that kind of gives us a bit of a push up in terms of perceived standard of the company. In terms of the science base, is brilliant because you're in essentially like one floor of the Johnson & Johnson building. There's approximately between 30 and 4 companies there at any one time. And they range from the big guys that have maybe 20 research scientists to maybe one guy on a laptop that has all of his procedures contracted out to research organizations outside off-site. And it also means that, as in an academic situation, you run out of salt or you run out of buffer or some kind of kit component, you can just, talk to your guys, your neighbors next door and say, hey, do you mind if I borrow it? My order's coming in next week. So very similar to academic situation in that respect. But one of the nice benefits of it is we're all kind of a little bit of a happy family together. We all get to kind of go through the ups and downs, the highs and the lows of, funding cycles and developing the science as we build and grow as a company, or unfortunately, fail and have to call it quits. So it is, generally, I feel like JLABS are very good at supporting the companies that they have there. So the success rate is fairly high.
Nice. Sounds like you have a nice community there and you can kind of share wisdom. And I assume you guys hang out after work as well.
Some of us do, yeah.
That's cool.
There's definitely, we get to use a lot of the facilities in the Johnson & Johnson campus. So they have a nice cafeteria, they have nice gardens and things like that. So there's that too.
So maybe if we rewind the clock slightly and go back to your Scripps days. Mm-hmm. So what was it that made you want to leave academia from your postdoc and kind of pursue this industry position? And maybe more specifically, why a startup versus being part of a bigger corporation?
So I was a postdoc at TSRI from 2010 to roughly 2016, and so a good 6-year stint in 2 different labs. At the end of that, I wouldn't consider that I had perhaps the most competitive publication record, and obviously current climate is fairly tough to kind of go for those big shot academic positions. But regardless, I think on a personal level, I just do a lot better in more short-term projects. Right. A bit more fast-paced, a bit more variation. So I felt generally in academic, or at least in my experience, academic projects kind of go on for years. Whereas, 6 months kind of yes, no answer kind of projects were definitely more my speed.
And you're finding that if things start to stretch on too far in industry where you are now, it's kind of canned and you just go down a different direction.
Exactly. We work on a project for 6 months and we have to, we're time limited in the way that our contracts are set up. So we have to produce our product at the end of that to then pass on to our clients. So then once that deadline's cut, then that's it. Next.
Right.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people listening might be considering a similar route. So how did you make that transition to industry? I mean, you said you didn't have a flawless publication record. Like, how important was that? How much did you devote to brushing up your application? Did you need to acquire new business skills, or was it just meeting people and networking?
A very key attitude that I had trying to make that transition into industry was to put a lot of energy into building a big network. Particularly for me, not having a green card at the time, it was going to be very hard for me to just send off online applications to your big pharma and hope for the best. I think it was more pertinent for me at the time to kind of take time to build those networks, meet people, try and figure out, what companies are growing, what companies need people, what kind of jobs there were out there. So when I started realizing that my postdoc was probably coming to an end and it was time to move on, I think the first thing I did was go to all the networking events I could literally find on LinkedIn. Everything from San Diego Biotechnology Network, San Diego Entrepreneur Exchange, Women in Bio, California Life Science Association. I mean, the list is endless, literally. And actually, for anyone listening, LinkedIn is a very good resource to find those. And a lot of them are free, and a lot of them may or may not also be reimbursable from TSRI. My own personal story, I actually met somebody at one of these events. We connected through LinkedIn, and then a good 12 months later, he reached out to me and said, oh, by the way, I know somebody's looking for a molecular biologist. Would you be interested? And so that really was a big turning point for me. I went and met this person for coffee, and then we just clicked and got on, and then we initiated the whole sort of immigration process and to start kind of the process of bringing me into the company. A big part of my transition into industry was my PI at TSRI, Eros Lazzarini-Denki, mainly because there was a period of which, while my immigration paperwork was being processed, where I was actually volunteering with our Bolita Bio at the same time as working as a postdoc here in his lab, which wouldn't have been possible at all without his sort of support and generosity with that. So I am a big thank you.
Yeah, it's really, I guess, not surprising to me anymore, but I was really shocked hearing different people's stories, and it often is just a friend of a friend, like a colleague of a colleague that puts you in touch, and it really made me realize how important it was to get out there and network. So is there anything that you miss from academia? Any cons?
Any cons? Let's see. You know what? In terms of, this is the big difference, I think, probably between a small startup and large pharma is I can imagine if you were involved in one of the large pharmaceutical companies, you kind of miss that element of discovery and the sort of variation between day-to-day jobs or day-to-day activity, experiments that you're involved in the lab. In a startup, I almost feel like I don't do that much different than I would do in a postdoc position in academia. I still have to work long. My motivations are slightly different, but I still have to work, long hours. You put in what you get out what you put in. Sorry, and I'm trying to think if there's any cons.
You seem very happy.
Especially where we are in JLABS, because we still have that interaction between other labs, other scientists there. But I guess if we were in a separate site somewhere else, where it'd be a bit more isolated, I think I would miss the kind of colleagues and the relationships that you form outside your lab.
Yeah, that's quite a nice segue. I was just going to ask what the future you think would be for the startup now. Do you think you will move sites? Will you be moving on from JLABS? Will you be taking on more people? Do you know the kind of direction you're going in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is exactly what our big goal would be. Funding dependent, obviously. Every startup aims to grow, and as we take on more and more contracts, we will need more people. So eventually we would like to move out.
When you're not working those long hours, what do you enjoy doing around San Diego?
Let's see. Actually, you know what? Recently, I've got involved in sail racing, which has been a lot of fun for me. We've joined a large boat with about 8 or 9 other people interchangeably, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of working in a team as well, which might also tell me a little bit more about why I enjoy working with my startup. And then I also do a lot of running as well. I'm a big runner.
Yeah, quite the athlete from what you told me last time we spoke.
I may have done a marathon or 2 in the past.
Yeah.
But that for me is my sort of downtime, my sort of self-inflection and kind of just zoning out a little bit. And yeah. I also, when you're out there running after an hour or two, you kind of mind drifts and you might think of some cool experiment you could do the next day and sort of a different take on things when you kind of find that clarity. So I feel it's beneficial for my sort of professional life as well.
Very cool. Having some epiphanies there on the road while you're slogging away on the miles.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing all your wisdom today. Maybe we'll just end on this question. So if you could just give one piece of advice and your one generalized piece of wisdom to anybody, it could be a scientist, maybe not, old or new, in kind of the realm of maybe lab work or just career progression or just kind of self-improvement, what do you think it would be?
That's a good question. I was thinking about this, and the first thing that came to mind was one of my favorite quotes by Richard Branson, who said that everybody needs to listen more than they talk because nobody learned anything from hearing themselves speak. And that is quite an important skill for just gaining knowledge in just one-on-one interactions, being able to sit there and remember what people have said, and you can use that information to, in other parts of your career, your personal life, etc., etc.
Yeah, I love that.
So, yeah.
Listening and being humble with all the information.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which is kind of ironic because I'm sat here doing a podcast talking about myself.
We're listening to our own voices.
Yes. Another piece of advice I would say for specifically more towards people looking to find positions within the local industry and startups, so et cetera, get involved. Get involved in volunteer organizations for all of those networking groups that I mentioned earlier. They all require help when registering people for the events or event setups, or and a lot of the times if you do that you can get them for free, so it's worth kind of reaching out.
And there we have it, folks. We can all be doing more to get involved, and it can really help if you're looking for that next job or you just want to improve your general networking skills. And we'll have links to those biotechnology networks in the show notes, so check them out. So big thanks to my guest Lynda from Bolita Bio. We'll have both her details and the company link online if you want to take a look at their super snazzy website, or get in touch with Lynda with any questions you might have. Thanks for listening, folks. Speak soon.